Hello, Internet! Welcome to episode 354 of the Assorted Calibers podcast, the Second Amendment podcast. There's a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd, and with me tonight, she's the greatest hostess in the entire world. She's a wonderful person. She smells nice. She really does smell nice. Erin Paulette! How you doing, Erin?
Red Door by Elizabeth Arden.
Oh, yes. This like comes up every time like we're hanging out. It's like, God, you smell good, Erin. What is your fragrance?
How am I doing? For someone who is terminally online today, I got really close to being absolutely done with technology, such that I was threatening both my computer and my tablet that if they didn't work, I was going to shoot them. And so help me Weer'd, if they hadn't worked, I literally would have.
I don't know what happened to my computer case that had a basketball-sized bulge in the back of it from buckshot. But that did happen.
I don't quite know when it happened. It was sometime last week. I don't know whether it was over the weekend or earlier in the week, but at some point, Google Chrome decided it was going to stop supporting a lot of the, I don't know if it's add-ons or additions. One's Chrome, one's Firefox. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They disabled them because they didn't follow the Google Play Store's best standards. And gosh, isn't it a coincidence that the vast majority of these blocked ads on various platforms, like on Facebook and YouTube and things like that? And gosh, they don't follow your best practices, huh? And I couldn't find a way to turn them on. I mean, they freaking disabled my ad blocker, Oh, I don't even remember what it was called now, like uBlock or microblock or whatever. It was the funny U with the leg hanging down in front. It made it like Greek or something. Anyway, so I finally got my revenge. I downloaded and installed Brave, which is a Chromium-based browser that has built-in ad blocking. So screw you, Google. Screw you, Chrome. I have once again succeeded in not looking at your stupid ads. So there was that. And then today, I had to go to the dentist, which is always a fun time. I'm at that age now where my teeth are going bad, and so things like crowns and bridges are a part of my life. Fun. And so I had a crown put in. And I was hustling home because on this online game that I play, we had an event. And the event I scheduled for 3:30 because I figured, so I had my appointment at 2. It shouldn't take more than an hour because it's just putting the crown on and then 30 minutes to get home. I should have plenty of time. And I did. I got home at like 3:15. And then my computer, for whatever reason, would not load the program for the game, despite the fact that, like, 3 hours previous, it had opened it. I have no idea what changed, but it would not load, and it wouldn't do it. And so, okay, fine, it's not going to work. And I tried to do a system restore, and the system restore eventually did work, but it took a long time. It felt like it took forever. So, okay, time's ticking down. I need to be there to help my clan. So I pull out my tablet. And this is the kind of app that, like, every time they update it, the memory requirements bloat. And so, I'm trying to boot this thing up, and it's being slow. And then it's like, we've got a new version of the game. No, screw you. Just open it. And so there I am. It's past 3:30. Things have started. my desktop computer is slowly chugging away towards a system restore, and my tablet is just, smoke's coming out of it almost as it grinds away. And
you're wearing
just with
oven
complete,
because it's hot to the touch.
and just with complete seriousness, I just threaten both of them, and I say, "You're going to work, or I'm going to kill you. This is not an idle threat. I have a shotgun. I will take you out in the back, and I will shoot you. You work, or you die."
I asked George Kellgren personally, if you get shot with a Kel-Tec, you don't go to heaven.
And, I'm holding my tablet in my hands, and I've just got that monkey brain impulse of, it has defied me, it must die. And I'm just wondering, I wonder how much pressure it would take to break this tablet. I mean, I might not be able to snap it in half, but I bet I could crack the screen. And just as I'm applying my frustration-fueled rage strength on it, it finally updates, and I go, "Oh, glad you got the memo." And so I was able to join and contribute, and I didn't do my top score, but I came in second, which is pretty good for missing the first 5 minutes of a 15-minute, we'll call it a raid. And it's just, between all these things, I'm done with technology. And I'm still going to use it, I am, but it's just, stop screwing with it. Leave it alone. It works. So that's how I'm doing. How are you doing, Weer'd?
I'm doing much better than that.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, luckily none of my things got through, though. You're describing about how much pressure would it take to break my break your tablet. It reminded me of Oddball hit me to a knife reviewer called Metal Complex on YouTube. And his latest thing is he goes on eBay and buys boxes that sell TSA confiscated knives by the pound. And he has bought like 20, 30, and 40-pound boxes of knives confiscated by the TSA. And of course, he suspects that like all of the good knives, those don't go in the boxes. Those
Oh, no. They go home with the TSA agents. We know that.
Correct. And so it's all just turds, just absolute turds. And he was having so much fun. And he was getting, this one particular box, he had like 6 or 7 Chinese knockoffs of the Spyderco Delica. And he just started snapping them in half. And it looked like he was eating crab claws. And he's like, "Let's see how strong this one is." Snap! There it goes. That's all I could think of with you saying. I wonder how.
I hope he was wearing protective gloves, because that would be such a good way to get yourself stabbed or sliced.
Yes. No. Yeah. He wears heavy gloves for it, both as for protection against getting cut, but also against the grossness that is just random knives.
Okay.
But yeah, I highly recommend it, especially that one. That one is really nice. He's like, people are probably going to get mad at me for destroying these, but they're trash. And I made sure to leave a comment that said, no, I like watching you destroy them. It was hilarious.
Yeah, I don't normally like test destruction videos, because I'm going, that's a perfectly good whatever, and now you're destroying it. And I know the information is valid, but still there's a part of me that mourns for the perfectly good item that now is destroyed. But if they're trash to begin with, who cares?
Yeah, and essentially that's his point of saying that, like, if you can literally take a knife between your two hands and just completely shatter, like just complete, I mean, it would completely come apart. That's probably not a knife that's good to have on you. You can actually have it break in your hand while doing legitimate cutting.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, so of course, obviously we didn't do a show last week because I was down in North Carolina. We do our little family beach trip every year, and that was great. The weather forecast said it was supposed to rain all week. And so when we went to the grocery store to buy our food for the week, I said, grab a couple of grab a couple of ponchos. And my wife grabbed a couple of just a cheap disposable ponchos. Of course, or I also realized, like, as we were halfway to the airport, oh, crap, I forgot my raincoat. And so I said, grab a couple of disposable ponchos. You know, worst case scenario, we don't use them, and we'll have a few more disposable ponchos we can just tuck in bags. And my wife did, and of course, the hearth magic works. We bought a couple of ponchos, and, like, there was probably a grand total during daylight hours of, like, 25 minutes of rain the entire week. Hooray.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times in my life I have deliberately done the whole, I will bring an umbrella along to ensure it doesn't rain.
Mm-hmm. I will say that I'm trying to remember if the boat left on Friday, which I don't think we've ever talked about it on the main show. I know we've talked about it in the blooper reel of marine superstitions, at least ones that New England fishermen tend to ascribe to. But starting a voyage on a Friday is generally considered bad luck. I'm trying to remember if this was one of the few ones that I did where we did start on a Friday. But I remembered as we were offshore, oh crap, I left my survival suit in my truck. And so it's one of those like, oh God, what does this mean? Luckily, we did not sink.
Oh, okay. So cold water survival?
Yes. Yep. It's
okay.
It's both cold water insulation and flotation.
Okay.
If you've got one of those suckers on, you'll be able to live for days in reasonably cold marine waters, and you can even fall asleep in it and you'll stay afloat.
It's a life vest onesie.
Pretty much. Yep. And we were, as fisheries observers, since we were not part of the regular crew, we were required to bring our own survival suit on board because it was not good to expect that the boat would stock extras. So, yep, that was that was a bit nerve-wracking. That was one of those try not to think about it. If you ignore it, maybe it won't notice. And then just before, it was literally like just a couple of days before we left for all of that, we'd been talking for like a couple of weeks, and I had been super busy with stuff and our schedules didn't line up, but someone had contacted me. It's actually the second person. Somebody else had contacted me through Operation Blazing Sword, and they essentially said, oh, I'm looking for an instructor. And I let them know that I'm not a licensed instructor. So this is, I'm not the person to get a certification through, but if you'd like a range trip, that's fine. And they never responded back. So I don't know if it was just that was not what they were looking for, and they were a little bit rude and not responding back, or what happened. But this person, I didn't want to jinx it, so I didn't say anything about it. But we finally met up at my club. And I brought a nice selection of novice and intermediate firearms, and we shot for probably a couple hours, and then sat down and talked for a while, and we both had a wonderful time. And I wanted to sing your praises because Operation Blazing Sword is an absolutely amazing organization, and it performed as expected.
Well, that's great. Glad to hear that.
So yeah, that was that's been essentially my last 2 weeks. So shall we dive into some news?
Well, I suppose so.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like 2 weeks away. I thought we were going to have piles of it, but I wasn't really able to dig up a ton of news, and frankly, I don't want to do a ton of news. Yeah. So first big one to talk about is essentially the pistol brace ban is dead. Dead. So if you've got a gun, either you have a gun with a pistol brace on it, it's been lying low in the back of your safe, as we recommended when the pistol brace ban first went through. Don't go turn. We told people, don't go turning your stuff in, don't go destroying your braces. Just tuck them someplace, discreet. Don't go bringing them to the range to draw attention, but wait and see how this blows over. And it is officially blown over. I believe when we were talking about the last ruling on the pistol brace ban, we mentioned the fact that the DOJ still had the power to appeal the decision, and it may go up to the Supreme Court. But we noted that Trump has been vocally against the pistol brace ban. So it's in the power of the White House to tell DOJ to back off, and that wasn't happening. And I was a bit disappointed in that, but it turns out that was all for nothing, because indeed the DOJ has called it off, and they have essentially chosen not to appeal the decision. So that means that's the end of it. And now pistol braces are as legal as they've always been.
Mm-hmm. And this is unusual, because when has the government backed off on anything? It's been a while.
Mm-hmm.
I also like the fact that this is actually one of the bullet points Brendan Herrera had when he was talking about being ATF director. He said, take all of these lawsuits and just essentially go, yeah, you win. We're not going to enforce it. And so that's really neat. I don't know if they actually took the inspiration from him or not. In my head, they did. So that's it's not really like funny, haha, but I am amused by this.
It's also a little bit better than that, because I think it was also in the last episode I talked about how the Bipartisan Safer Community Act. It was, I joke about the fact that, what does it do? Because it's really not a law that I talk about a lot, because there isn't really a ton of action going on with it, even during the Biden administration. But there is some pretty nasty stuff in there, but every single piece of legislation that's nasty in it is really just giving power to the ATF to regulate, say, the lawful sale of firearms, or various components of firearms. And I can't even remember exactly where it's going through. And with a, at least outwardly facing, 2A friendly, ATF, well, they're just not going to enforce any of that stuff, because it's not like there's a letter of law that they're ignoring. It's just saying, yeah, you guys can enforce this however you want. You're in charge of enforcing it. And so they can go, okay, we're not. But it does mean that all we need is another, gun prohibitionist president to appoint another anti-gun ATF director. And then all of a sudden it's nasty again. This is a little bit better, because again, this is court precedent. This is essentially the court saying that the pistol brace ban that was part of the Trump administration, the first one, was in fact unconstitutional and not right. And by the DOJ, essentially, declining to appeal it, it means that is essentially the letter of the law, how it's written. And you don't need to worry about you don't need to worry about just somebody bringing in a new ATF director that's, another jerk like, Steve Doodlebach or David Chipman. If David Chipman had got in, oh God, an actual anti-gun activist got in, was actively on the payroll of Giffords when he was being considered for the ATF director. That would actually been really interesting in his confirmation hearing. But somebody like that could come through and they could suddenly say, oh, we'll go through. No, the only way to get the pistol brace ban back would be a direct act of Congress actually writing a law that bans them. And
why would they do that?
Yeah, well,
they've dragged their feet this far. They drag it some more.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly, again, they're still taking victory laps on the Bipartisan Safer Community Act, of which I'm saying right now is effectively dead. It may come back, but it's so insipid that the law itself completely changes from one administration to another. So yeah, if that was the best that they could do, then yeah, it's shown that they didn't really have a lot of capital to burn on. So all right, now so that was a good news. Here's a bad news. Is that the Second Circuit has ruled that, is it New York? Yeah, New York State. They are doing what's been essentially the new hotness within the frivolous anti-gun lawsuits. They've always been sore about what was going on because, again, it was the Clinton White House's plan to essentially bankrupt all the American gun makers by every time a crime happened in the United States with a gun, just sue the gun manufacturers for them being implicit in the murders or whatever it was. And you don't have to win it because it'll just cost either the gun companies will often settle because it's literally cheaper if you can get a good settlement number on the table. You can just pay off the plaintiffs and it'll actually be cheaper than the cost that it would take for you to fight it. Or they fight it and they win. And again, it could cost even more. It could cost millions of dollars to actually vindicate yourself against these lawsuits. And it costs the anti-gun groups pennies. And so obviously we had the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act that just said, knock it off. Some people refer to it as special protections. It's not. It's the same as every other protection. Again, someone's drunk driving, you don't sue Budweiser or whatever alcohol company that they were drunk on for creating an intoxicating substance that would allow someone to get behind the wheel of a car. And you don't go and sue Cadillac because that was the brand of car that somehow allowed someone to drunk drive. No, you say the person who is irresponsible enough to get hammered drunk and then get into a car and then get into an accident. They are the one at fault here. And that's no different than a firearm is a Smith & Wesson M&P or a Glock 19 or a, Ruger 1022. They're all just tools and they can be used properly or they can be abused. And it's the person behind them that is the problem. So, but this one they're going after, it's the same with the Remington lawsuit. They're going after advertisement now. And they're seeing that as kind of a loophole in PLCAA. And obviously the National Shooting Sports Foundation has challenged it and saying that it's in violation of PLCAA. And so far the Second Circuit judge said, in fact, it's not in violation of PLCAA and that the lawsuit against, I'm trying to remember which gun company they're suing in this, but the lawsuits can go forward. And so we mentioned when the Remington lawsuit was started that this is, based out of Connecticut, that this is going to be something we're going to see a lot more of specifically from the anti-gun states. And it appears to be going that direction. And as I always say in these instances, that yes, this is something that hopefully the courts will sort out and this will go through. Because again, this is ridiculous that, the advertisement that the gun companies are using are causing people to do violent crimes. Because if you're a gun nut, you've seen lots of gun ads, either banner ads on computers, or if you're old like me and still read gun magazines, you see the ads in the gun magazines, and they're not. I've never seen one that was particularly edgy. The worst you've got are like the Bushmaster ones that were raised in the Sandy Hook suit, where it's like your man card is canceled or your man card is renewed because you got a Bushmaster rifle. It's one of those like, yeah, it's just tasteless, but it's not violent.
I wonder if this could be challenged on First Amendment grounds.
Probably could. And certainly the one big thing is it could be swatted down by just simply amending PLCAA to say, nope, also this. Like you can't sue, especially over super duper vague lawsuits. Again, we talked about the Remington suit. That's the only one that's gone all the way through. And again, that was a settlement. It never actually went to court. It was never directly challenged. It was just the Remington had gone into bankruptcy. It had been completely dissolved. The various components of what we once knew of as Remington is scattered to the winds. Different companies have taken different pieces and are making various guns, ammunition, and intellectual property in various parts of the country. And so there was just essentially the only thing that was left of Remington was the insurance company holding the bag with the liability insurance. And they just said, all right, cool. We don't want to play this game anymore. What do you want to make it go away? And they said, however many million it was. And they said, deal, and paid them off.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So this could be solved by legislation. Again, the idea that the Second Amendment only exists in the judicial branch is ridiculous, where we should be using all the tools in our toolbox. And so this is something you can contact your senators or your representatives and get them to draft legislations to amend the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act. And that'll stitch this up nicely. So yeah. And again, National Shooting Sports is still is going to continue challenging this and take it all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court if that's where it needs to go. But that will take years and years and years.
Okay, so continuing the line of dumb reasoning, Everytown's at it again, and they are hysterically screeching about 3D printing. Because 3D printers could be used to make guns, and they don't want 3D printers to make guns. And so they've got all these demands, and there are two things I want to point out here. They've said that 3D printed guns have been linked to violent crimes. And according to the National Association for Gun Rights, there's been a single murder in the United States using a 3D printed firearm in the almost decade they've been popular and accessible. And continuing the Twix here, more murders have been committed with potato peelers. So almost exclusively criminal cases involving printed firearms are for simple possession of them. So this is an example of the states taking a non-problem, begin arresting people for it, and are throwing it back as proof that they are a problem. Mm-hmm. And so then the second part of this is that, I mean, I don't know if Everytown is just simply ignorant, or if they're deliberately misinterpreting how 3D printers work, or I should say how guns are made, because it's not like making a gun is a really complex process. I mean, making it work, that's different, but it's planes and tubes. And if you tell a 3D printer not to make these simple geometric shapes, you've halted the ability of a 3D printer to print anything useful. And so that's why these 3D printer companies are, at least for the moment, not bowing to Everytown's demands, because this would be slitting their own throat. The moment they institute these controls, you're going to have a lot of false positives, you're going to have things stop working, and you're going to have a lot of dissatisfied customers who then won't be buying their product. So, at least for the moment, market pressure is allowing these companies to tell Everytown to go pound sand. And that's good. My only concern is that what happens when Everytown manages to get the ear of politicians.
That is true. And that's also an interesting thing, is that we're actually seeing less and less influence of these anti-gun groups as the time goes on. But yeah, there's nothing that says that there can't be a resurgence. And so the big thing that actually I wanted to take away is actually not the Second Amendment angle of this, but the First Amendment one. Not only are they trying to demand that the companies stop, put some sort of limitations in their software to prevent them from printing guns, which again is going to be an exercise in futility, because again, these are very, very wide open tools, and the fact that they can print anything and everything that's going on. I mean, just a number of interesting and cool things that are printed by 3D printers is just amazing. And the idea that, just tell it not to print a gun. Well, what if you tell it it's not a gun? And when you look at some of these designs that people are coming up with for 3D printed guns, those like, that's a really interesting idea. Like that doesn't I actually need to sit there and look at it for a little while to figure out how it works. And I'm a gun nut. And so like the idea is no, I'm not printing a gun. It's illegal to have brass knuckles. Well, I don't have brass knuckles. I have a novelty paperweight. But also,
or a bottle opener. I seem to recall you sent me a novelty bottle opener.
Yes. Yeah, that's I've got it right here in my hand. It sits right here on my desk. It's really nice. And so it's a bottle opener. It's not a knuckle duster. It just if you happen to use it as a knuckle duster, that's an improvised weapon. But also they're openly saying that like they want to pressure social media to stop sharing 3D print files that entail firearms data. And I assume because again, anti-gun groups tend not to ask nicely. They tend to, if they can get just, handshake compliance, they'll take what they can get. You had things like they demanded that Target ban open carry in their stores, and Target wrote a letter that said we're going to ban open carry in stores. And then there was an open statement on the store policy, which is if a Target employee is to see somebody open carrying in the store, they are not to confront the person and they are not to call the police. And so it's just one of those, you're not welcome to carry in the store. And we're actually not going to even let you know that you're not welcome. If we're not going to remind you of it, you have to find this that's not even on the Target website and easily accessible. So they'll take victories wherever they can, but if they can, just make it straight up illegal, and you'll go to prison, or your social media company will be fined for sharing illegal 3D printed files. They'd absolutely do that. And that's not a Second Amendment issue. That's a First Amendment issue. And as obviously you've got I was actually talking to some of our friends about this, and noting the fact that your gun prohibitionists, they're anti-rights, because
yes,
these people are the ones that say, people under 18 can't, shouldn't be able to shoot guns. You can't bring underage people to the gun range to shoot that. That's expression, and that's freedom of association. That's First Amendment issues. You can't share these files. Don't show images of people shooting guns on social media or broadcast platforms, et cetera, et cetera. Again, that's First Amendment issues. If you're in a state like myself with registration, for a fact that there are people that want to go, well, we should be able to not only should you register your guns, but we should be able to inspect your registered guns to make sure that you've still got them and you haven't disposed of them, or you haven't modified them in such a way to make them non-compliant with the law. And so that's Fourth Amendment violation. And many countries that have gun licensing will often require annual inspections of, a lot of them require you to have a tamper resistant safe and things like that. So they want to inspect to make sure that you've still got all the guns and you haven't lost or sold any of them. And then also that they're being stored in a proper storage vessel. And again, that's Fourth Amendment issues. It's also with registration. There was actually a case where someone was charged with not registering their firearm, and the person was a felon in possession, and they actually cited their Fifth Amendment rights, saying that if I had registered my firearm to comply with the law, you guys would have arrested me for illegally owning a firearm because I can't register a firearm. And the court ruled, no, that's a Fifth Amendment issue. But they were absolutely trying to go against the Fifth Amendment. And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all the way up to just the fact that, the 10th Amendment on the fact that they believe in state rights if the state is choosing to ban guns over federal law, but they don't believe in state rights if the states want to have more freedom when it comes to the right to keep and bear arms.
So you were talking about them wanting to ban the sharing of firearms information on social media.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if they're just dumb or they're taking a different tactic. I don't know. But I mean, there are ways you can share information other than online. You can share information by printouts, or you can hand someone a thumb drive.
Or you could publish the data for the Liberator 380.
Mm-hmm.
And as gun prohibitionists attempt to crack down on knowledge, Xander proves that ignorance is in fact not bliss.
Welcome to Independent Thoughts with yours truly, Xander Opal. A couple weeks ago, I was digging a hole with the farm's backhoe and part of the mechanism shattered. In the time between ordering parts and when I could fix it, a heavy, expensive steel pin, really a foot-long cylinder nearly 2 inches across, fell out and was lost. That piece was over $200 and would have to be special ordered. After a reasonable effort searching for it, I rummaged up a chunk of old shaft the right diameter, cut a section off a little longer than the old one, and got to work. The original part had a hole drilled through from one end to the other, and a smaller hole cross-drilled in the middle so it could be greased. Fortunately, we have a battered old small lathe, and I have a little knowledge and a lot of curiosity and ingenuity. It was easy enough to set up, add a support for the middle, then drill past the halfway point, flip the thing over, and repeat. I have a bit to learn, as the two holes weren't perfectly lined up, but good enough for what it's for. As I was doing this, I realized that this wasn't much different than drilling the barrel of a gun. After consulting with Heinrich from Geets, Gadgets, and Guns, I didn't have time to heat treat the thing like I wanted to, but now I know how. And if the thing breaks, we'll have gotten my time's value out of it, and I can make a new one much faster. And better. Stronger. I also know that with the setup I have, I can use more appropriately sized stock to make pistol barrels easily. A single shot or pump action wouldn't be hard to work out, and I'm sure I can reinvent the wheel if I don't have any samples for semi-auto fire control groups. Honestly, an electrically fired pistol would be easier and simpler for me to work out and build casings for, without the need for toxic and dangerous primer compounds. Black powder is simple enough and will take minimal effort to learn to make. Lead can be reclaimed from scrap. Most of this was old technology 150 years ago. Technology that is very, very hard to control without the government getting out of control. I have in my head the knowledge of how to build a lathe from scrap using methods and materials that are completely off the shelf and requires little if any unique items. Likewise, a metal shaper, drill press, and milling machine. Once you have a lathe of modest size, you can do nearly any other machine process with it, just not as conveniently as one of the other tools. 3D printers are much the same. You need an accurate positioning system, a cheap computer to drive it, a controlled heating element, and a simple electronic file for what you want to build. The same things, minus the heating element, can be added to the machine tools to make things accurately and repeatably with those as well. Digital files are easy to share and don't require the internet. An old saw is, never underestimate the bandwidth of a station wagon full of drives. A flash drive is easy enough to share, after all. Now what if all these things involved were made illegal, or so tightly controlled you need SOT-level licensing to own and operate them? For one, say goodbye to most remaining manufacturing in the US. Machine shops would go out of business as well, removing rapid turnaround on custom parts or repairs for, say, agriculture. How much do you want to pay for your food? Or your car? How about massive lag, as everything you do online has to go through government servers, and no computer can function offline? How about USB drives and microSD cards being as tightly controlled as machine guns? All this and more would certainly make the US even more of a desert when it comes to modern industry, and make North Korea look advanced when it comes to technology and computers. We in the US would certainly be a lot less capable, and a lot less able to afford to help others if these things came to pass. Perhaps, instead of regulating the guns or means to make guns, we should be looking at finding ways to get people to not feel the need to commit murder. Have fun, be safe. I hope I gave you something to think about.
You know, I'd never heard the bandwidth of a pickup truck with full of drives. What I had heard was, and I think maybe this is where it came from, it sounds like something Cory Doctorow would say, but I don't know. It's like, don't underestimate the bandwidth of a UPS truck.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, in both instances, it's correct. If you can physically deliver media to someone, that's really, really hard to restrict.
That is true. I'm actually reminded of the old William Randolph Hearst quote saying, "Don't get into an argument with someone who buys ink by the barrel."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, that is definitely true. And again, we see regulations and restrictions as damage and root around them. Like there's so much stuff. We just talked about the pistol brace ban. Oh, you're not allowed to have short-barreled rifles, but you are. But what about if we cut it down and make it into a pistol? Okay, you can have like an AR-15 pistol. Well, what if we put this like bracy thing that clips to your forearm on it? Yeah, I guess that's okay. What if we tap it to our shoulder? It turns out that's okay. So is it a short-barreled rifle or is it a pistol? I mean, practically speaking, we know what it is, but legally speaking, it's something different. Same thing with the Mossberg Shockwave. It's technically not even a shotgun, even though looking at it and knowing that it's based on a Mossberg 590, it is what we would call a shotgun, but legally it's not a shotgun because it's not meant to be fired by the shoulder, and it is not a concealable weapon because it's too big. But it's smaller than a regular shotgun, so it's just a gun. I was thinking as Xander was talking about him doing all the machining work and all that, and that is something that I have absolutely zero skills on whatsoever. And I was thinking, Aaron, as a prepper, do you ever think that you're part of that I'm putting a team together meme?
No.
Of just getting your various various friends and stuff together with useful skills.
No, see, I know what you mean, although I hadn't seen the meme until today and you explained it to me. But no. And maybe I'm being too literal, but here's why. When you showed me those memes, they all had things in common. Mm-hmm. They were all variations on a single theme. But in my experience, if you're trying to put together a group of preppers, while there will be overlap in interests, what you really need is people with varied knowledge, and the more varied, the better. Mm-hmm. Because you never know what you're going to need, and we can't all specialize in everything. So you would need, a medical professional and a farmer and a machinist and things like that. And I just feel like what you showed me was just a little too focused.
That's true. I'm also thinking more along the lines of like your Hollywood movie, or TV show like The A-Team or Ocean's 11 or those sort of things where again. Yeah,
Ocean's 11. Yeah, that's getting closer. We need a world-class acrobat. Why? Oh, here's why.
Because it's going to make for a great scene. So I interrupted you. What were you about to say?
So I want to introduce our listeners to a really handy terminology and piece of history. So during the era of the Soviet Union, censorship was active. And in fact, people were encouraged to snitch on each other. But information still prospered. The way they did it was by reproducing documents that were censored. That I'm sorry. They got the uncensored version and they passed those around, or they replicated them and did it by hand. And this was known as Samizdat. I'm probably horribly mispronouncing it, but in Russian that means self-publishing. And so, actually, a very interesting form of Samizdat was that they would take old X-rays and they would then make records out of them. I guess because the material was close enough to the acetate of an LP, and they would record Western music on it. And so that leads to some really funky things where you've got the X-ray of someone's chest and there's a rib cage, but it's playing like Elvis Presley or something. And so that's really neat. And so a Western adaptation of the word is Samizdat, where you would take this data and you will pass it along by hand like the Russians did during the Soviet era. So look it up. It's really interesting.
Yeah, especially those. I was actually, as soon as you were talking about it, I got thinking about those the phonographs on the X-ray celluloids. Yeah, they're supposedly they would not last very long. The needle would be actively wearing out the groove as you were listening to it, but you'd get several listens into it, and they were very, very inexpensive. Easy to make. All you needed someone with a record press and a phonograph master. But yeah, that was those are super neat.
Yeah, they were called bone records or music on the ribs.
And I gotta say, I mentioned the fact that ignorance is not bliss, because people often will say ignorance is bliss, and I get what it means. But I've generally found that when you meet someone who is someone you would very easily describe as an ignorant person, they are often some of the most miserable people to be around. And I find that the people that, if the people that are the most happy are smart people, and especially smart people that know their place in life. They know that they have expertise in one thing, and so they have value, but they also know that they are not a god and that they need other people around them. And those people tend to be the most easy to get along with people out there. And, I'll note that you've got the Dunning-Kruger effect. The smarter you are, the more you know about the vastness of human ignorance and how much we have to learn. And the dumber you are, the more you think that, you know what, I'm pretty close to knowing everything. And so just by nature, you get someone that's really, really dumb. They're often going to be miserable because they feel like they've been cheated by the world, or they're just super duper unlucky because I'm really smart and I've got a lot to bring to the table, but yet nothing ever seems to work out for me. Oh, and one last little anecdote as the person who enjoys a little drink is that, there's some debate on this factor, but I personally like this narrative is that modern drink culture has its start in Prohibition, is that when people banned alcohol within the United States, well, suddenly that's where the speakeasies started happening. That's where the backroom bars started coming through. That's when the quiet little house parties started happening. And of course, that's also like where a lot of the tastes that are going through. I don't know if your parents ever drank like Seagram's 7 or Crown Royal or those sort of whiskeys. I know my dad was a huge Seagram 7 drinker in my youth.
So the answer is no. My mother grew up Southern Baptist.
Gotcha. And
even when she wasn't, she hates the taste of alcohol. I mean, it's like a full body shudder of revulsion. Mm-hmm. My father, he didn't drink a lot. The only thing I ever saw him drink was beer and scotch. So, no, nothing like what you're describing.
Gotcha. But it's one of those. That's certainly the Seagram 7 and 7, the whiskey highball, that sort of stuff that was done with. I mean, obviously, Seagram 7 is an American whiskey, but it's American whiskey that is designed to directly compete with Canadian whiskeys. And the reason why these whiskeys were so popular, especially to the baby boomer generation and the greatest generation, is because those people grew up during Prohibition. A lot of people would go fishing in Lake Michigan and they would instead of fishing in Lake Michigan, they'd go across the lake to Canada, and then they'd go buy crates and crates of Canadian whiskey and then smuggle it back across and unload it. And so because of that, a lot of the people, even though America's the home of bourbon and rye whiskey, a lot of people were drinking Canadian whiskeys, and they acquired the taste of them there. And so that's why. I mean, nowadays they're starting to die off, and you don't see the displays that you used to. But used to be in liquor stores, there'd just be huge displays of Seagram 7 and Crown Royal, and if you're lethal, I'm a big Lethal Weapon fan. The Roger Murtaugh's favorite drink is Canadian Mist, which is actually my favorite Canadian whiskey as well. But Canadian Mist, it was that's vestiges of Prohibition. That's vestiges of you tried to ban alcohol, and look what you did. You tried to ban the AR-15, and it became the most popular rifle in America.
All right, Weer'd, I know that you want me to pivot a certain way, but I've already got the intro set up, so you'll be disappointed but also amused. In this episode of Gun Lovers and Other Strangers, look, David, I'm not Gunsmith kink shaming. I'm just Gunsmith kink asking why.
Hi, and welcome to Gun Lovers and Other Strangers. Over the past few months, the firearm world has suffered two significant losses, one personal, the other industry-related. So in this segment, I'll be talking about Frank Brownell and Anderson Manufacturing. Frank Brownell was born on June 24, 1939 in Montezuma, Iowa, the only son of Bob and Lois Brownell. Following college, where he graduated magna cum laude with a degree in advertising, Frank served in the U.S. Naval Reserve. After completing his military service, Frank joined the family business full-time and immediately started making his mark on both the company and the firearms industry. Long before I knew anything else about him, Frank had impacted my life and interest in firearms. He helped lay out the big book catalogs, which I had spent many nights poring over, marking items for my wish list and noting specifications of various products. Frank also helped edit and publish the first edition of Gunsmith Kinks. Coincidentally, the same year both I and his son Pete were born. I have all 4 volumes, and they are filled with a combination of incredibly useful data and techniques, as well as stories and humor. They're an invaluable resource and have a place in any gunsmith's library, whether amateur or professional. I've been a customer of Brownells for nearly 40 years. My first purchase was made only a few years after Frank took over as president of the company in 1983. If I recall correctly, it was a set of their Magnatip screwdriver bits. Since then, I've probably paid for at least one semester of college for a member of the family with my orders. In 2007, Frank became the CEO of Brownells, then chairman of the board from 2012 until he passed away. Frank guided and led his father's company for over 4 decades, from one success to another. It's now in the very capable hands of his son, Pete. Regular listeners may recall that Pete was on the board of directors of the National Rifle Association for nearly a decade, and served as president from May 2017 through May 2018. Frank passed away in Grinnell, Iowa, after a lengthy illness on June 18, 2025, just 6 days shy of his 86th birthday. Veteran, father, husband, entrepreneur, businessman, historian, and philanthropist, Frank Brownell has left a significant mark in a number of areas. He will be sorely missed. May his memory be a blessing. Around the same time Frank left us, so did another icon of the firearms industry, Anderson Manufacturing. Referred to as the Poverty Pony, based on their budget-friendly products and logo, Anderson had many detractors and even more loyal fans. A recurring theme on the Assorted Calibers podcast is the term barrier to entry. Nearly all gun laws, either intentionally or otherwise, raise this barrier. Companies like Anderson lowered that bar, making affordable products which enabled more people to become involved with the shooting sports without spending a fortune. While their merchandise may not have had the polish of some other manufacturers, it was serviceable and, more importantly, inexpensive. So it was a shock to many of us when we saw the following announcement on the Anderson website. Customers and industry partners. For nearly 70 years, Anderson Manufacturing proudly operated as a family-owned Kentucky-based company built on excellence, integrity, and a deep commitment to our values, especially the protection of Second Amendment rights. Over time, we became a trusted manufacturer of 100% American-made firearms, parts, and accessories. We consistently upheld ISO 9001 standards and built a reputation for delivering quality products at a fair price. After careful consideration, we made the difficult decision to sell the company and close this chapter of our story. With the sale now complete, the Anderson brand has been discontinued and Anderson products will no longer be offered. As a result, warranty services on Anderson firearms, parts, and accessories are no longer available. Your support and loyalty meant everything to us. It was truly an honor to serve you. Thank you, the Anderson Manufacturing Team. While the Anderson name is gone, Ruger has purchased the manufacturing facility, machinery, and remaining inventory. Ruger's current plan is to retire the Anderson name and integrate the facility into their own, significantly expanding Ruger's production in the AR market. After learning about the end of Anderson, I picked up one of their AR lower receivers, but I haven't decided what to do with it yet. I may eventually offer it up for sale, as Virgin Anderson AR lowers will become an increasingly rare commodity. If I do, I won't accept any lowball offers. I know what I got. Final note. Any of our listeners who can make it to the Knoxville area the weekend of August 9th and 10th, Oddball and I will be attending the Gun Owners of America Goals Expo. If you see us, stop and say hi.
Hello, I'm Pete Brownell, CEO of Brownells, a third-generation family-owned business that's been serving gunsmiths, hobbyists, and shooters for over 75 years.
That about wraps up this segment. If you have any questions for me or suggestions for future segments, or a comment on a past segment, please post them on the Assorted Calibers Podcast Facebook or MeWe pages, and Aaron or Weer'd will make sure I see them. I'm also a contributor on the Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. Finally, I'm a published author, and books with my stories can be found on Amazon under the names Brena Bock and David Bock. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. I'm David, and this is Gun Lovers and Other Strangers.
Yeah, Gunsmith Kink.
Yeah, the first time he said that, I practically did a spit take. It's like, no, he didn't say what I think he said. I must have misheard it. And then I checked the show notes, and there it is. It's called Gunsmith Kink. Obviously, language evolves, and it meant something different back then. Something perfectly innocent. But now it's just, oh.
And there's something I always say when with somebody who a lot of people care about, especially someone who's very old and a lot of people care about when they pass, is I note that none of us are getting out of this alive. Nobody lives forever. And so the most we could hope for when we do finally pass is that hopefully we got a good run at it, and we lived for a long time, and we left the world better than when we found it. And there's a lot of people that will be left behind that will be sad that we're gone and will miss us, and we will be remembered for long after we die. And that's the most any of us can hope for. And I will just say that Frank Brownell, you did it. You did it. That's as good a score as anyone. You got a perfect score in life, and my heart goes out to the family and the company as well.
What I have heard is that a way to consider the effects of someone's life is to think of it as ripples in a pond when you throw a rock in. And those ripples spread out and they affect other things, and sometimes they bounce back. And those ripples can extend a lot further metaphorically speaking, than just that one person's lifespan. And so, Frank Brownell, he was a boulder in the lake, and the ripples will be felt for a long time, perhaps even generations to come. I don't know how long the Brownells company will last. Hopefully it lasts a good long time. But as long as that company exists, he's still making ripples. So good for him.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And then on to, Anderson Arms. And yeah, that is really, really sad, because you'd always hear people talking about their poverty ponies and all that. But it's one of those things of the guns were like super duper duper cheap. The parts were really, really cheap. And they were called the poverty pony. But honestly speaking, with all the mil-spec data out there, like, it's pretty hard to screw up an AR-15. Like, I've never heard of really any one brand of AR-15. I mean, obviously there's wonky guns that show up and need a gunsmith or had something go wrong in the manufacturing process. But as a general rule, like, if an AR rolls off the assembly line, it doesn't matter if it's a $300 Anderson or a $3,000 HK. They're all just ARs, and they all just work.
I don't have it. Actually, I'll make this a little more professional.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to add to that, because I don't have a lot of experience making guns, because I don't have the disposable income you do. I've made precisely one AR-15 in my life, and it's fine. I'm sure someone will have a problem with it, but I would think that at this point, it's 60-year-old technology. It's very mature. I would imagine that by this point, all the kinks have been worked out, and it would be very difficult to screw up an AR-15.
Mm-hmm. Especially since, it's still very possible to screw up a 1911 pistol, just because the original one was designed around a lot of hand fitting and all of that. But for the AR-15. Eugene Stoner he was working in like Fairchild Aircraft. He was very much on the cutting edge of modern manufacturing and modern materials. So it's definitely probably one of the earliest modern firearms, if one could call it that, where the fact that it doesn't need a ton of man hours or labor to go through. And then all the other stuff that's come forward has just been evolved with the gun platform, so that, you just buy a bolt carrier group. You don't need to worry about, I need to file on this and hand fit this bolt carrier group. No, it'll just drop in. And Aaron, do you know who I'm glad dropped in?
You're always happy to see me.
I'm always happy to see you, Aaron. You know who else I'm happy to see?
Our listeners.
Our listeners. Thank you so much for tuning into our show. We really do appreciate each and every one of you. I really do mean that. That's not just a catchphrase. It's really great that this show has been going on for as long as it has, and we've got all these nice ears going through, and probably new ears every week. So thank you so much for tuning in. But we got to give an extra special thanks to our supporters on Patreon, because they're the ones that there's cost associated with this, and you guys help. And so to become a Patreon patron, go to patreon.com/Assorted podcast to sign up. And it's not a tip jar. We're not begging. It's not a donation bin. It's a store. We're selling stuff. We're selling early release of the podcast. We're selling the ACP film tracks. We're selling the ACP blooper reels, and we've got the ACP mag dump.
Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts and Pocket Casts. Subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends, both online and off.
I got a blog. It's weerdworld.com. That's weerdworld.com. And hear me weekly on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network.
And you can get more from me at linktree/Aaron Paulette. That's linktree.ee/Aaron Paulette, all one word.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
I'm super distracted right now because I got a bunch of people that are vying for my attention. But this is like standard procedure for Weer'd. I've never known him to focus. Although, I mean, you'd think with the ADHD he would have hyperfocus, but no, it seems like his brain is just going everywhere. And if this is what it's like inside his head all the time, I have only sympathy. So the amount of noise in our head is assorted, and so is our podcast. Good night, everyone.
Good night.